Governor, on another issue, interventionism, nuclear weapons, what should be the trigger, or should there be a trigger, when nuclear weapons use is ever put into play?
Nuclear weaponry, of course, would be the be-all, end-all of just too many people and too many parts of our planet, so those dangerous regimes, again, cannot be allowed to acquire nuclear weapons, period. Our nuclear weaponry here in the U.S. is used as a deterrent, and that's a safe, stable way to use nuclear weaponry. But for those countries, North Korea also under Kim Jong-il, we have got to make sure that we're putting the economic sanctions on these countries and that we have friends and allies supporting us in this to make sure that leaders like Kim Jong-il and Ahmadinejad are not allowed to acquire, to proliferate, or to use those nuclear weapons. It is that important. Can we talk about Afghanistan real quick also, though?
Certainly.
Okay, I'd like to just really quickly mention there, too, that when you look back and you say that the Bush administration's policy on Afghanistan perhaps would be the same as McCain, and that's not accurate. The surge principles, not the exact strategy, but the surge principles that have worked in Iraq need to be implemented in Afghanistan also, and that perhaps would be a difference with the Bush administration. Now, Barack Obama had said that all we're doing in Afghanistan is air raiding villages and killing civilians. And such a reckless comment, an untrue comment, again, hurts our cause. That's not what we're doing there. We're fighting terrorists, and we're securing democracy, and we're building schools for children there so that there is opportunity in that country also. There will be a big difference there, and we will win in Afghanistan also.
Senator, you may talk about nuclear use if you like, and also about Afghanistan.
I'll talk about both. With Afghanistan, facts matter, Gwen. The fact is that our commanding general in Afghanistan said today that the surge principles used in Iraq will not, well, let me say this again now. Our commanding general in Afghanistan said the surge principle in Iraq will not work in Afghanistan. Not Joe Biden, our commanding general in Afghanistan. He said we need more troops, we need government building, we need to spend more money on the infrastructure in Afghanistan. Look, we have spent more money, we spend more money in 3 weeks on combat in Iraq than we spent on the entirety of the last 7 years that we have been in Afghanistan building that country. Let me say it again. 3 weeks in Iraq, 7 years or 6.5 years in Afghanistan. Now, that's number one. Number two, with regard to arms control and weapons, nuclear weapons require a nuclear arms control regime. John McCain voted against the comprehensive nuclear test ban treaty that every Republican has supported. John McCain has opposed amending the nuclear test ban treaty with an amendment to allow for inspections. John McCain has not been the kind of supporter for dealing with, and by the way, let me put it another way, my time's almost up. Barack Obama, first thing he did when he came to the United States Senate, new senator, reached across the aisle to my colleague Dick Lugar, Republican, and said, we've got to do something about keeping nuclear weapons out of the hands of terrorists. They put together a piece of legislation that, in fact, was serious and real. Every major, I shouldn't say every, on the two at least that I named, I know that John McCain has been opposed to extending the arms control regime in the world.
Governor.
Well, first, McClellan did not say definitively that the surge principles would not work in Afghanistan, certainly accounting for different conditions in that different country, and conditions are certainly different. We have NATO allies helping us for one, and even the geographic differences are huge. But the counterinsurgency principles also could work in Afghanistan. McClellan didn't say anything opposite of that. The counterinsurgency strategy going into Afghanistan, clearing, holding, rebuilding the civil society and the infrastructure can work in Afghanistan. And those leaders who are over there who have also been advising George Bush on this have not said anything different but that.
Senator.
Well, our commanding general did say that. The fact of the matter is that Again, I'll just put in perspective, while Barack and I and Chuck Hagel and Dick Lugar have been calling for more money to help in Afghanistan, more troops in Afghanistan, John McCain was saying 2 years ago, quote, the reason we don't read about Afghanistan anymore in the paper, it's succeeded. Barack Obama was saying we need more troops there. Again, we spend in 3 weeks on combat missions in Iraq more than we spent in the entire time we have been in Afghanistan. That'll change in the Barack Obama administration.
Senator, you have quite a record. This is the next question here, of being an interventionist. You have argued for intervention in Bosnia and Kosovo, initially in Iraq and Pakistan, and now in Darfur, putting U.S. troops on the ground, boots on the ground. Is this something the American public has a stomach for?
Well, I think the American public has a stomach for success. And my recommendations on Bosnia, I admit I was the first one to recommend it, they saved tens of thousands of lives. And initially, John McCain opposed it along with a lot of other people. But the end result was it worked. And look what we did in Bosnia. We took Serbs, Croats, and Bosniaks, being told by everyone, I was told by everyone, that this would mean that they've been fighting and killing each other for 1,000 years. It could never work. There's a relatively stable government there now, as there is in Kosovo. With regard to Iraq, I indicated that it would be a mistake to go into. I gave the president the power. I voted for the power because he said he needed it not to go to war, but to keep the United States, the UN in line, to keep sanctions on Iraq and not let them be lifted. Along with Dick Lugar, before we went to war, said if we were to go to war without our allies, without the kind of support we needed, we'd be there for a decade. It'd cost us tens of billions of dollars. John McCain said no, that was going to be okay. I don't have a stomach for genocide when it comes to Darfur. We can now impose a no-fly zone. It's within our capacity. We can lead NATO if we're willing to take a hard stand. We can. I've been in those camps in Chad. I've seen the suffering. Thousands and tens of thousands of people have died and are dying. We should rally the world to act, and we should demonstrate it by our own movement to provide the helicopters to get those 21,000 forces of the African Union in there now to stop this genocide.
Thank you, Senator. Governor.
So obvious that I'm a Washington outsider and someone just not used to the way you guys operate, because here you voted for the war and now you oppose the war. You're one who says, you know, as so many politicians do, I was for it before I was against it, or vice versa. Americans are craving that straight talk and just want to know, hey, if you voted for it, tell us why you voted for it. And it was a war resolution. And you had supported John McCain's military strategies pretty adamantly until this race. And you had opposed very adamantly Barack Obama's military strategy, including cutting off funding for the troops that attempt all through the primary. And I watched those debates, and so, you know, I remember what those were all about. But as for Darfur, we can agree on that also. The support of the no-fly zone, making sure that all options are on the table there also. America is in a position to help. What I've done in my position to help as the governor of a state that's pretty rich in natural resources, we have a $40 billion investment fund, a savings fund called the Alaska Permanent Fund. When I and others in the legislature found out that we had some millions of dollars in Sudan, we called for divestment through legislation of those dollars to make sure we weren't doing anything that would be seen as condoning the activities there in Darfur. That legislation hasn't passed yet, but it needs to, because all of us as individuals and as humanitarians and as elected officials should do all that we can to end those atrocities in that region of the world.